are live. Oil conflict. It's back. Is this really about oil or is it about the Fed? Specifically, is Bitcoin and crypto's reaction to these geopolitical events and movement in oil about the Fed? In other words, can Warsh actually change rates or sound less hawkish if this oil and geopolitical overhang persists? Because after all, why does Bitcoin go down when hostilities erupt? Shouldn't there be some sort of digital gold or safe haven bid for Bitcoin? Shouldn't it act like something else other than what it's doing? Well, the good news is we're going to unpack all of that. We're going to talk about Fed chairmen when they're new, and we're going to talk oil, Bitcoin, and stocks. So if you need to know what's going on and you don't know what's going to happen with overnight headlines and geopolitics and whatever, stay right here. This is the Market Update. I am your host, Bill Noble. If you need a roadmap in crypto, subscribe to this channel. Turn on alerts so you know when we're going live and if the content works for you. Please hit the like button. Now, let's jump in to the new conflict, right? So 1 minute we have an MOU, and then we have the 250th anniversary of America. We have July 4th. Everything's fine, right? Nah, wrong. Secretary of Defense gets on a plane and heads for the Middle East. And the next thing you know, that country's agenda is being implemented by new attacks with the Orange Man going, I hate these guys. I'm not doing business with them. It went from peace any minute to, yeah, you know, we're going to be attacking for a couple of days. Please, you got to be kidding me. So naturally, that turns what could have been a perfectly good summer, don't short the quiet market, glide higher in crypto into a highly volatile interruption. Now, let's discuss the interruption. Let's just go to TA and look at it. Okay, so gloriously above the 21-day moving average, a glorious reversal off the Michael Saylor dumped it, and then the Orange Man comes out and pumps it, as in crypto. We'll talk more about Scott Bessent's real crypto pump in a minute. But everything's fine. We're above the Gann line. Bitcoin does this huge reversal, and then boom. The 63K trap. You think everything is good, and then it's unfortunately classic bear market stuff where Bitcoin turns around and gets slammed. Now, when you look at oil, okay, there is a Lux Algo buy signal. Okay, it gapped higher. It hit the 21-day moving average, oil that is, and has not been able to get through that. So that's one positive sign. Obviously, the line in the sand, is probably around $76 in crude. And we'll go over exactly what that means when it comes time to do the PowerPoint. All right, this $76 line, it matters. Now, the other thing that matters is what is going on with U.S. interest rates. So when oil goes up, everything that comes out of the Strait of Hormuz doesn't get through. This includes fertilizer, petrochemicals, blah, blah, blah. And this creates pretty strong inflation pressure, which gives the bond market an excuse to go, oh, I hate this. I'm selling. Now, bonds were about to start doing something decent and holding together. And now, guess what? Lux Algos is inserting support as underneath interest rates, and interest rates could go higher with, the market anticipating that nothing good can come from Kevin Warsh until this oil thing, at least we get some kind of clarity. Right now, all they did was muddy the waters. That's it. Now, Nasdaq, our friend Nasdaq. Okay, so Nasdaq kind of breaks down below the 21-day. This could be a diamond top. And then what does it do? It comes right back, right? The market doesn't know what to do. The market doesn't know what to do. Thank you, Mike, for the eagle. Appreciate that. And then Nasdaq comes right back. You know, it's like the ultimate in exasperation. We have some other countries' foreign policy being implemented that hurts anything that's interest rate sensitive. And everyone's answer to that is to buy Nasdaq. Crazy, particularly when you look at what they're spending on data centers and the debt and blah, 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 blah. It's absolutely maddening. But the key isn't about oil. This is not about oil. It isn't. It's about inflation and the Fed, and about how much room Warsh has to say anything, really. I mean, because Warsh has said nothing other than, I'm really not happy, prices are too high. That's it. And I'm not telling you anything going forward. Those are the only two things he said. Now, we know what he wants to do. He wants to cut rates. He wants to believe in productivity. One commentator wrote that, you know, the productivity boom, it took a while in the 90s, right? Like, you didn't have an Apple Mac show up in 1980 something and then have everybody all of a sudden be super productive with Word and Excel right away. That took a period of years. Now, I don't think AI is going to take a period of years, but you can't get too juiced up about him wanting to repeat the Greenspan era with productivity, with oil threats hanging over everybody's head. I mean, it's amazing. It's like, who is the orange man listening to? Why isn't he on the phone with Warsh going, dude, I can do a lot for you if you just knock it off with oil. If you just knock it off, right? So let's go over, let's get to it. Like, why is Bitcoin down when oil goes up? Okay. So the July-September decision matrix for Bitcoin. Restarted hostilities turned Bitcoin into a rate decision, oil into the veto player, and Kevin Warsh into the market's shock absorber. Right? Bold frame, inflation shock first, rescue trade second. In other words, markets love to test new Fed chairman. Yeah, it's happened to Greenspan with the 87 crash. Now, is Warsh going to get tested? Yeah, probably. So 68 to 78 are key levels in oil, 5.2 in the long bond, and obviously 58 in Bitcoin. The market is asking one question: who blinks first? Right? I'll just read this so our friends in TikTok don't have to look at half a screen. The market is asking who blinks. Well, it's not going to be Iran. It's not going to be Trump. The first real blink is from Warsh, deciding whether or not oil inflation or market stress matters more. Now, of course, you know, what market stress in equities? The stress is in the bond markets, both in the US and in particular in Japan. These things, they matter. Like, people are scared of what the Bank of Japan is going to have to do. These are fragile things. So is our inflation situation. So adding this uncertainty, I don't think it helps. Obviously, it doesn't. Now, if oil holds above $75 or is between 75 and 90, the Fed can't ignore this. They can't ignore this. They can't dial down the rhetoric. They can't get dovish. They can't talk about productivity. They can't do anything. The Fed can only do something if oil falls back below 70. So I don't know. We had peace, and now it's like, yeah, they're a bunch of morons. I don't want to talk to them. So which is it? with SecDef over, talking to the, the country that we can't talk about. All right. If oil's below 70, Warsh gets room to sound supportive without looking soft. Now, what is Bitcoin in all this? Crypto. Bitcoin is not digital gold. It's like a leveraged liquidity proxy. And you're like, what is that? That means Bitcoin is reacting to whether or not Warsh can cut rates and how fast they can pump money into the system, whether it's just to pump money into the system or it's to pump money into the system to help save the Japanese, to help stop the yen from falling. That's one of the biggest print jobs ever, is the Japan bailout. But again, you can't talk about that. You can't talk about that in Bitcoin, right? 58K is the no policy rescue line. In other words, if you see Bitcoin make a new low, you know for sure that Warsh is not coming to the rescue. He's not helping capital markets. He's going to leave Nasdaq in the bubble zone. He'll treat Nasdaq as too big to fail, leave it alone, and let him take it out on Bitcoin. Unfortunately, right? There is no FOMC meeting in August, which means, Warsh gets maximum ambiguity. That means if you don't know what he's thinking now, you're not going to find out in August. And if oil goes up, well, people are just going to have to do the math. They're going to say, hey, if there's an inflation problem or if there's a threat of one, that hurts crypto, obviously, right? And, one minute the orange man's talking it up, the next minute he's like sabotaging it. It's crazy. The outside the box conclusion is Warsh may prefer, listen to this. He may prefer a short, ugly risk asset sell-off. So he can either do a cut or start to talk dovish. In other words, Warsh may actually want the stock market to go down. And that's funny because markets frequently test new Fed chairmen. They'll test them. It's like, oh, okay, this is your view. Okay, let's hit it. Now, if they hit Nasdaq, at this point, you have to say to yourself, well, what's going to happen to Bitcoin? Any fantasies about oil going up and that affecting equities and Bitcoin actually, going the opposite direction of Nasdaq is probably not a good thought process if oil is above 75. If oil is not above 75, well, hey, that's terrific. All right. So your classic war scenario is that, long-term U.S. bonds go above 5%. Those are the bonds that help determine your 30-year mortgage rates, right? So that means the market sees an inflation shock coming. So you have to watch US 30Y on TradingView. Okay. Bitcoin fell while oil surged. Again, Bitcoin becomes, kind of a liquidity proxy, right? The odd part is oil and bonds are acting like the Fed is already behind the curve on inflation, while Bitcoin and stocks are hoping for, a dovish Fed. It's scary, right? In other words, if oil goes up, oil's like, yeah, this is bad. Oil hasn't gone up yet, so we don't have to necessarily freak out about that. But the bond market is kind of freaking out about it in the US and Japan for multiple reasons. So, Bitcoin and stocks are like, yeah, we're going to get our bailout yet. Yeah, we're going to, sort of like get the printer going, the little Pepe with the printer. We're not getting it today. We're not getting it today. Oil with bonds means, it's like the Fed has to think about its credibility first. Like, I know we're like, when rally, when rate cuts, when number go up, not at the moment. Now what he can do instead is that he can say, we're monitoring financial conditions. We have tools that are ready. He can talk about the labor market, but Bitcoin may be capped at 66K under this scenario, right? Now, if there's still conflict going on and oil is trending higher, Bitcoin's going to be capped at 66K, and the other thing that Warsh would have to wait for is for oil to take its toll on economic growth. In other words, if the labor market and economic growth start to suffer because of what's going on with oil, then he can react. Okay. If oil is below 70, you can have 75K Bitcoin. So now we're moving into the bottom line. If oil is between 75 and 90, you have risk of this 58.4 stuff, right? And then if there's a big shock, you have a big move in oil. Well, obviously, that's just absolutely not good. All right. Now, on this 4-year cycle thing, it's their victory lap has become oppressive. So that's a little Gann mathy. But I mean, the 2014 bull market, the 2017 bull market, 2014 bull market, 1,000 days. Bear market, 365 days, right? 2018, 21 bull market, 1,000 days. Every bull market's 1,000 days, and every correction is 365 days. Almost to the letter. Almost to the letter. Now, what is that? Well, the guy who did the tweet says the probability that it's a coincidence is 0. It could be some psychological thing that just repeats because it does. Right? You have altcoin excess, and then you have to take 365 days to work it off. Now, my opinion, as you know, is that it's always about the Fed. Stan Druckenmuller 101. It's always about the Fed. 2018, 2017, tighter Fed regime. 2021, 2022 bear market. Fed raises the Fed raises interest rates 500 basis points, triggering a leveraged catastrophe in crypto. And this bear market, we did not get the interest rate cuts that we wanted. Everyone's like, well, we didn't get the huge climactic excess. We didn't get the huge climactic excess because the trend was interrupted with both distribution and a Fed who was stuck because most likely the AI data center build out, etc. And then, of course, we have to go fight in the Middle East for the 5th time. For what reason, I don't know. But that gave the 4-year cycle crowd and this 40K crowd enough room to be able to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. I mean, I can tell you right now on YouTube, nothing plays but Michael Saylor doomsaying stuff. So you're either talking about Michael Saylor or 40K, or no one is talking to you. No one. No one is watching any of your content because only doom content plays. Because the 4-year cycle guys have sold everybody, rightly or wrongly, on the fact that there's no bottom in this thing until October. And of course, we go do the geopolitical thing, which in reality isn't a geopolitical thing. It's something that constrains the Fed, right? Because it is all about the Fed. And look at this, right? Federal Reserve says a few officials support raising interest rates. Gee, which Fed officials do you think? Powell, in an unprecedented move, stepped down from the head boss, and he's now on the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee. Powell is still on the committee. Normally, when you're not the boss anymore, you ride off into the sunset. Well, Powell is freaking out because he had inflation on his watch, and now he wants to make sure that there's no inflation. So he wants to stick around and hike rates because that worked so well the first time. Right? the Fed, Warsh is building a new Fed model. He wants to cut rates because he thinks AI is going to be more of a force in productivity than the PC was, and it's going to happen faster. He also knows that the labor market stinks, that if you apply for a job, there's 150 people there for a job. I've seen it firsthand. That's it. That's the facts of the matter. There's 150 people there for every full-time job. And the Fed will have to react to that after we get done scaring them with inflation. Like, if we could just get done scaring them, or if by some other fact, probably the Japanese factor, you got a sell-off in stocks. At this point, I'm seeing a sell-off in stocks as something wonderful for crypto after going through this analysis. In other words, this is why Toby, right, who we're going to see later on today at a free crypto happy hour, free crypto happy hour tonight, she's like, yeah, if crypto goes down, it won't stay down. Because if crypto goes down, most likely that's going to be Warsh's excuse. Either, growth's falling out of bed, Nasdaq's falling out of bed. God forbid there's something wrong with Japan. I mean, dude, if the dollar is rising and the yen is crashing, Warsh cannot raise rates. You raise rates and make the dollar stronger, Japan's done. Japanese bankruptcies are at an all-time high. I mean, there's no way. There's no way. They're sitting there dying to cut rates, but they can't do it. And that's really why this oil trade matters. Whether it's, it's fine, right? This is just like a one-day thing. Let's blow up some empty buildings and, basically negotiate through violence. They're still negotiating. They're like, well, you know what? You should see it my way because I can blow up this and that. Watch. Let me just dial this up on my phone right now. Now, that would be very constructive. That would be. Because if all we're doing is negotiating through violence, it doesn't result in $90 oil. Oil is probably being manipulated lower. The thing that's hurting the United States is that when they closed the Strait, everybody came over here to buy oil. Everybody came over here. So all of our oil went in everyone else's tankers. And now everybody in the Orange Man and everybody's wondering why gasoline is still not going down in the United States. Well, one, July 4th is a driving holiday in the United States. Two, refiners, they don't have any oil. All of our oil went overseas. So it doesn't matter what the price is. They don't have it. It went somewhere else. So, whatever oil is left goes to the highest bidder, hence sticky gasoline prices at the higher end. And again, that has to have an impact on Warsh's psychology. In other words, oil would have to get bad enough to start slowing economic growth. It would have to stunt non-data center growth. And to be perfectly honest with you, I know these hyperscalers want to keep spending. Like, I know Meta doesn't care. They've already said, we're not going to stop. We are just going to keep going. So I get that. But what about everything else? Everything else that gets impacted by oil. And again, markets love to test a Fed chairman. So, that leaves everything in the hands of either S&P or the long bond. In other words, a bond crash could happen as a result of this, right? If you have oil going between 75 and 90 on real shooting over there, or a close of the Strait, right? You don't want to have a bond Japan crash and have, the Fed be constrained unless that crash got bad enough, unless things got really ugly. Because I can tell you this much. If anything can bring down Nasdaq, if anything can hurt S&P, you have a bond market meltdown in the US and or Japan, you can get a serious reaction. Now, unfortunately, that does impact crypto, right? Because, crypto is nothing more than a liquidity metric. Up, higher oil, up, no liquidity. Up, sorry. Back to 60. Infuriating in many ways. However, if oil is temporary, our hands, this geopolitical situation is not about the geopolitical situation. It's almost like, who cares in so many ways, except the part where it affects what Warsh is going to do, except for that part. Because, there are parts of tech that are getting monkey hammered. South Korea index, which is like chips, right, enters a bear market after stocks plunge more than 20% from its June all-time high. In other words, there are components of the stock market that are already crashing. You're headed possibly for some kind of AI-related winter because, they've just overspent to the point where they just can't overspend anymore. That's it. And the returns from these stocks are not going to be there. That's where crypto can benefit. In other words, there is a positive perfect storm for crypto, right? Equities lower, oil normalizes, Warsh can come in and be somewhat dovish, assuming that, there isn't a disaster in risk assets or some sort of disaster that brings in Warsh. And I hate to say this, but I think everybody in crypto is actually rooting for something big to happen that brings Warsh in with rate cuts or dovish language. In other words, the 4-year cycle guys with 40K, like I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but are we cheering for 40K at this point? Even though I think that's just the most ludicrous number. This is so ludicrous. But are we actually cheering for that? Because whatever takes Bitcoin down to 40K brings in Warsh and brings in the reversal. So, in case you're wondering, it's like, oh my God, the geopolitical situation. It's not the geopolitical situation, it's Warsh. Now, let's look at Solana. Was looking so good. Still on top of the 21-day moving average, so not the end of the world. But you hit the big Luxalgo resistance point. You tried multiple times to get through it, and now Luxalgo is putting in a big, fat, juicy sell signal. It hasn't taken out the 21-day moving average, but if it does, it's a problem. If it doesn't, okay, it's all right. But that was the best looking chart. And somebody wanted to look at Ethereum versus Bitcoin. I think this was the 12-hour chart that they wanted to look at. Person had a really good call. So it's a 12-hour ETH versus Bitcoin, which is essentially like an altcoin metric. Right? Is Ethereum going to start outperforming Bitcoin? Right now, the answer is no. Because this particular moving average on this 12-hour chart is acting as resistance. Not that you want to hear any more negative news, but this is the problem. If you look at silver and gold, you're like, if there's conflict, why are silver and gold down? Well, it's because of this whole liquidity thing. Right? You're not going to get anything from Warsh. You're not going to get anything. I mean, there are a lot of reasons to think that there's a bottom in silver. Silver, like everything else, goes up and then gets slammed. Gets slammed right on this Luxalgo trend line, which was like, oh, yeah, we're going to break out. Oh, sorry. No. It's about liquidity. Oil is not about oil. Geopolitics, the Strait of Hormuz, nobody cares. The only thing anybody cares about, whether or not we get liquidity. Now, if you want to, they've got altitude sickness in Dalian. So this is the dollar versus the yen. I know this might be pretty confusing because everyone talks about the yen crashing, but this is the metric, the way they look at it. You know, everybody's afraid to take it above. Everybody's afraid of a new high, even though there is a buy signal here, because they're afraid of the Bank of Japan. They're afraid of everybody. They're like, you know, if we take this up in their face, what are they going to do? Well, I can tell you what they're going to do. They're going to come in with the bazooka. They're going to come in and just be like, no, we'll sell treasuries. We'll get a swap line from the Fed, meaning the Fed will print money, give us dollars so we can, you know, sell the dollar and buy our currency indefinitely. Okay. Crypto is a prisoner to all of this macro stuff, including the macro stuff that people can't see, which is the connection between oil and what Warsh can and cannot do. And August is a quiet month. And I was like, okay, don't short the quiet market. Now it's like Warsh can just like go to the beach and leave everybody wondering, which for crypto, frankly, sucks. You know, we have to find cryptos that are like not sensitive to interest rates. Sometimes what I like to do on days like today is see what's actually up. You know, interesting that Pendle is up. You know, they're selling the rally, but some of these DeFi plays, you know, we're doing fairly well into today. I actually like this crypto. Numeraire, right? This is the automated AI hedge fund that you can, I think, buy a piece of. All right. Trying to break out. Everything's trying to break out. Nothing is breaking out, but that is a very interesting formation in this particular altcoin. Very interesting. So I don't mind saying that there are positive things out there. Like TIA is a layer 1 Celestia that we like. Bag holders are selling, even though it's up 3%. I think you get the point, right? We are actually waiting for that day where the liquidity comes. I think the good news about Bitcoin is that even though the news is not spectacular, even though the 4-year cycle guys have an intellectual advantage, it's not getting hammered. Okay. You know, the Iranians, see, now it's becoming silly, right? Eagle King just reports that the Iranians are saying that anybody whose name appears in the law enforcement files should not be lecturing the Iranians about morality. See what I'm saying? It in that sense, it's silly. It's silly. And if that's what it is, then it's okay. Everyone's like, oh my God, war's back. War has nothing to do with it. They can go to war all day long. It's how Warsh sees it, and it's how it affects the economic data. Let's see who's here. Okay, we have Rostart, right? We have somebody giving me an eagle. Thank you. We appreciate that. John 3:16 says, don't cry, buy. Right? What is going on with crypto, says Roby. Dude, at the end of the day, it's all about getting that liquidity that we need. It's all about getting this like interest rate albatross off our back. Home prices hit a new high and no one's buying homes. No one can afford to buy homes except boomers with NVIDIA money. Mojo giving me some love as the bulldozer. Welcome. GG, a member. Welcome. Welcome to the show. Sloan Dog. Taco. Let's hope so. Because the thing that's funny is about oil, if they actually did Taco after testing the 21-day moving average, in other words, if you look at this, the last time oil touched the 21-day moving average, it got absolutely monkey hammered lower. So if this is all BS, oh my God, Katie bar the door, watch out. Right? Warsh wants room. Give the man some room. Let the guy cook, as they say in the antivirus Telegram group. Odd Dark is here. Bull Runner is in the house. 5-wave, no cuts. Right? Bull Runner is working on my son's car, but is here anyway. Well, dude, of course you are, because you're the man. Of course you are. Wing Raven reminding the Spartans of Patreon and the YouTube member area, our loyal customers. We are picking altcoins that are winning. And when it is time, our people will be loaded and ready to go. Because, if the 4-year cycle guys are right, we only have until October, and it's not too early to start picking what you want to do. Big Daddy Crypto, a member, is back. Time to buy. Right? Mike Vernon is here. He's the one who sent the eagle. Welcome. Right? Teach a guy how to fish, or you can give a guy an eagle. Thank you. Okay. Love hitting your live stream when it's live. Yes, today we got live in the afternoon because we had to make sure that Art on the night shift at the Amsterdam airport had something to watch besides the World Cup. And Art is here today. Okay. Mike Venom, right? FLMC meeting were hawkish. Yeah, dude. I mean, they kind of have to be, because what are they going to say? Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, inflation, whatever. They already did that. They did that in 2021 and got absolutely embarrassed. Now they're afraid of any uptick in inflation. Fact is, whatever they did with interest rates never stopped it. It never stopped it. It never stopped it at the grocery store. And there's probably going to be another wave of that because of petrochemicals and fertilizer. I hate to say it. Right? Warsh is going to have to come up with whole new inflation metrics, and he's probably going to. In other words, the way everybody looks at the Fed is going to have to change, because as soon as he gets the excuse, he's going to implement a different model. The world just has to align so that he can implement the different model. Like, how are you the Fed chairman in the AI age? Certainly Jay Powell didn't know how to do that. He didn't. Jay Powell destroyed the little people, created a bubble in Nasdaq, and never stopped inflation. Other than that, he did just fine. Warsh is not going to repeat those mistakes. And that's where Bitcoin and crypto will resurrect itself. Is that going to be in October? I don't know. It's relatively hard to argue with the 4-year cycle guy, even though I hate it. I want to see this as a correction in a much broader bull market, right? Fix the money, fix the world. For God's sakes. Yeah. MMC says oil is artificially suppressed. It's just a matter of time until it gets loose and launches. DNT Saver. And he's right about oil. Just Dario has been talking about this over and over and over again. They've been sitting on oil. The price, the actual, follow gasoline in the United States at the pump. That's the actual price of oil. Is oil going to explode? And then while just the Saudis cut prices by $15 for Asia, why is Walmart cutting prices? Okay, this is a good point. By the way, oil coming out of Russia was at $40 a barrel before this happened. That's the extent of oil demand out of Asia and China, just collapsing. So if you want to talk about the good news, if today's geopolitical shenanigans are an attempt to get oil higher, so that maybe the Iranians can make more money or US companies can make more money or whatever. In other words, if you invoke the intelligence community model of nothing is what it seems, Big Daddy is right. If oil fails at the 21-day moving average, then this was the dip to buy. And Big Daddy's like, why didn't you say that earlier? I'm like, I don't know. But it's true. It's absolutely true. If today was a story of pump it before you dump it, because I still think that's true in the dollar and in bonds. I didn't get that from, that was from Bisher from Stormrake. If they're pumping it before they're dumping it, oh my God, then 61K in Bitcoin is a screaming buy. Wisdom says Japan and stocks, hurry up and do what you need to do before the midterm elections. That's kind of the problem. Like, how do you get the big negative trade in a world where politicians will never let it go down? I mean, do you know that AOC, the bartender from the Bronx turned congressman from New York, is now tied with the guy from California to be the Democrat nominee? Now, personally, I think if you're going to go in that direction, because I'm from the New York, New Jersey area, if I'm partial to any of those characters, it actually would be AOC, right? Believe it or not. And of course, AOC as president would be ridiculously bullish for crypto and privacy. Ridiculously bullish for crypto. Who knows? The New York mayor could be the vice president. We could only hope. Right. Wisdom says they can't allow stocks to crash. They can't. They'll allow Bitcoin to crash, but that's when we pick up more at 40K. He could be right. I mean, if something's got to get hammered, the only thing that's not held up by the Fed is crypto. Right? It's like, it's and here's the meme. Here it is. This is the meme. Bitcoin starts to pump. Boom. The train. Sad, but true. However, there is I think there clearly is a bright side. Gary coming to you late at night from Hawaii. DNT Saver says DEXE, which we covered and discovered in the YouTube member area, is ready to take off. Kim Craig is here giving me some sheepdog love. MJ Hits is tired of this mess. Oh, dude, the fatigue. First, the stock market guys. First, they had chase everything. Then everything crashed in their face. So the stuff that they didn't want to buy but were forced to buy, they bought and then it crashed. Talk about exhausted. I mean, we're exhausted because it just won't move. We're ready. It just doesn't go. John Legend says New York and Cali candidates. That's what you want. No, dude, I don't want any of that. I want absolutely none of that. I'm just saying, if they have to put up somebody from the left, AOC is my favorite lizard. Let's do it that way. If we have to have a lizard, that would be the lizard. That would be at least somewhat entertaining. But, those people in charge. I mean, my mere exist. I can't say it. I can't say it. I have a view. John Legend said, have you heard the one about Bonk DAO? No, I have not, but I will look over it. I will look into it. And of course, just to add a little spice to it. Orange Man says, yeah, ceasefire's over. Okay. Somebody said XRP. Oh my God. XRP on basketball jerseys. Is that bullish or bearish? Announces a partnership with the Kansas Jayhawks. Dude, please do something that increases the profile of the token in terms of its usability. Don't put it on some basketball player's jersey. That might be a sell signal. Now, of course, XRP at $1, I don't know. There doesn't appear to be a rationale. There's no rationale to sell XRP at $1. There's no rationale to be negative any of these layer ones or any of these big coins here. BlackRock bought $250 million in Bitcoin in the past 2 days. They started buying Bitcoin after selling every single day for more than 2 weeks. So Michael Saylor heaves it. BlackRock picks it up. No doubt, on the heels of perhaps their own tech funds wanting the Bitcoin ETF when it's down. Because it makes sense, right? I mean, if Korean stocks and chips just went down 20%, everybody who runs an equities mutual fund is going, uh-oh. You know, I don't know that we want to own this, right? Maybe we should think about lightening up. What are we going to do? Oh, okay, let's buy the Bitcoin ETF. Conveniently, BlackRock, the company with all these mutual funds, has it. Again, everyone in crypto is negative. Seriously, I can wear the green shirt. I can put a green thumbnail. You know, I can put Toby in her Bitcoin jumpsuit. I can do all of these things. Nobody wants to hear anything but what's negative. And with this stream, I'm trying to paint a picture that if you get oil normalizing, if we go into taco mode and oil actually goes down, I think everybody can tell you the scenario where oil goes up because oil is suppressed and it is BS. But something ever happened that was positive and that oil actually went lower. I want everybody to start equating oil with Warsh. Like Warsh is like an enigma, right? Oil and Warsh are connected. Lower oil, Warsh can come in. Higher oil, and we're stuck. We're stuck. But BlackRock may be telling you that we're going to get unstuck. I mean, you know, like BlackRock doesn't know. But you know, we're too busy implementing someone else's agenda. You know, U.S. launches new round of strikes 2:51 p.m. Whose agenda is this? But we have to keep it. We have to keep it economic, right? If Kevin Warsh determines the future of not just Bitcoin, but your altcoins, right? If you ever got liquidity coming into the crypto market for whatever reason, coming out of equities, an equity market decline, I don't know, a sharp downturn in U.S. economic growth. If we get anything other than this inflation booga booga story, crypto can go up. And the longer it sits here like this, I hate to say it, but the more of a window the 40K crowd has. Like, we got to box them out like basketball so that they don't have any room to dunk on us. Because if you give them room, they will smash this thing. They want to smash it. They do. Hedge funds, I think, want to smash it too because they're short. And I thought they were going to have to cover, and they were going to have to cover until, you know, we just saved them with, you know, whatever we're doing over there. I never thought I would hear myself say this, but war sucks. It does. It sucks. You know, war is inherently inflationary. You can Google that. I think that's Milton Friedman. War results in, you know, supply disruptions, governments printing money for something other than the people. It sucks. When it's over, war steps in. When war steps in, nothing stops crypto. Nothing stops Bitcoin. That, I think, I want to end it on a positive note. If oil does not explode, if they can keep a lid on it or get some measure of good news, crypto can do better. In the meantime, we're subject to these headlines and swings. And I think the 21-day moving average at 63 looms as something very important. So we got to keep the faith. We got to keep the faith and stop talking about geopolitics and start talking about how it affects the Fed. That's the market update for today. Crypto happy hour later this evening.